So, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has urged the Prime Minister Keir Starmer to review hate crime laws in order to protect free speech. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has said, police the streets, not tweets, following a rise in police investigations into what they call non-crime hate incidents. Children as young as 9 years old are among the people being probed by police over insults in the school playground and posts online. The Home Office is now reviewing how police record non-crime hate incidents, while police forces across the country say they're acting in a proportionate way. But is investigating non-crime hate incidents a good use of police time? Well, we're joined now by political commentator Andy Williams. Andy, thanks ever so much for joining me. My understanding is that you are in support of the recording of non-crime hate incidents. Is that correct?
I am in certain circumstances. I think I'm not a free speech absolutist. I don't think that people should have the right to say absolutely whatever they think or feel on social media platforms like X. You know, on platforms like that, you have a responsibility. You are a publisher. And I think you need to be thoughtful about what you say. And if you're promoting hate speech, if you're inciting violence, inciting racial hatred or otherwise, I think that's a problem. However...
Sorry, Andy, just to clarify the point. So, of course, incitement to violence is already illegal. A lot of the problem comes when it comes to defining this term hate speech. Can you tell us what you mean by hate speech?
Well, I think this gets to the heart of the problem, is that different people would give you a different answer to that question, which is why I am in favour of a review with caveats. I'm in favour of a review of hate laws because I don't think even police forces are on the same page on this issue. My concern is that this could end up being a politically charged, politically motivated review. Kemi Badenoch obviously has her own idea of what a good outcome of that review would look like, and I'm sure Keir Starmer does too. So what I think we need is an independent review with independent people from an independent body to look at it from scratch. In short, my definition of hate speech would be anything that is, and I know that sort of inciting racial hatred or violence is already a separate law, but anything that is manifestly hateful. Now, the problem is that different people have different views about what that is. So I do accept that it's tricky, it's a grey area.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because you've just given me a circular definition, which, of course, is not usable in law. So we've had the European Court of Human Rights, we've had UNESCO all say it's not really possible to agree on a mutually agreed definition of hate speech. That being the case, given the problems you've just outlined very clearly about the potential politicisation of this, wouldn't it be just best if the police didn't get involved in what citizens of the UK say and think?
Well, I don't think the status quo is viable because there's obviously a difference of opinion between police forces. There's a difference of opinion between politicians and the police. There needs to be, I think, some really clear guidance laid down. I don't think you can just say, oh, put it in the too difficult box, it's complicated, and run away from the problem. You know, I'll give you an example. I was on a train about an hour ago, and some people who'd left the England-Ireland game early were chanting about the IRA. They were chanting in favour of Tommy Robinson. Now, is that hate speech? I'm not sure, but certainly it's something that I think is unacceptable in a public place to be chanting because it was clearly aggressive. They were clearly making a point that, you know, a racist point in terms of Tommy Robinson. And I think that's a real challenge. So how do we police, and I mean police in terms of literally police forces, but also how do we define these complicated areas?
I think the question, Andy, though, is who gets to decide? I mean, a lot of people would say that they don't find those sorts of chants offensive and that maybe some chants that might be more in line with your political views, they would find offensive. So how do you set up an arbiter who can be completely impartial and can sort of overview the very notion of what hate might be?
I don't have a great answer to that question. I think it's obviously there's a challenge in finding the definition of independent would again vary depending on who you spoke to. But as far as possible, I think we need to find a way through this. I don't think we can just say, walk away. People should be allowed to say and do whatever they feel like. As I say, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I don't think that works in practice. I think we have to be mindful of the impact that speech has on other people. And therefore, we need to find a way through this complicated problem.
So which do you feel is more of a risk, just historically speaking? People saying things that others find offensive or empowering the state to incarcerate citizens for what they say?
Well, I think that's a false dichotomy. I don't think it's one or the other. Obviously, I'm not in favour of a thought police of a 1984 style state where we are locking people up for posting things or publishing things that we don't agree with. But I think there have to be limits. I really, really strongly feel there have to be limits. If you are doing and saying things that are just manifestly causing problems in society, and I'm not just talking about upsetting people, but I'm talking about having an impact on people that is just way beyond their, what is acceptable.
So I think we should dig down into that. So that's very interesting. So you've drawn a distinction between purely offensive speech, which I think we can probably agree on balance can't really be policed because it's too subjective, to actual real-world harm. But what is the evidence that mean, nasty, even racist tweets online result in real-world harm?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends is the answer. Now, let's look at the riots, for example. I know that there was a huge blow up of people after the riots who were saying we've ended up with these people being imprisoned in some cases for a couple of years, 2-3 years, for tweets. Well, actually, firstly, I don't feel sorry for those people whatsoever because what they were saying was disgraceful and beyond the pale. Now, you're going to say, well, that's your view. That is my view. And I think that the evidence that they cause problems is that the riots were exacerbated manifestly and factually by some of the things people said online during that period. There were people who whipped up specific instances of violence, of disorder in specific locations. And I think that's a very clear example of where we need to have limits around this.
I don't think it is. I agree with you that what they said was disgraceful and beyond the pale, but I don't agree that they should be incarcerated as a result of that. And I would actually suggest there is no evidence whatsoever that any specific tweet caused any specific real-world violence. If you have any evidence, I'd love to hear it, but I haven't heard any so far.
I've not compiled a dossier on that, but I think it's very clear that there were a number of instances during the riots in specific towns and cities where violence took place that wouldn't have happened. There was a direct causal link between what some people saying online and incidents that happened.
Where's the evidence for that, Andy? Because no such evidence was presented in court in any of these cases. So where's your evidence? Where are you getting this from?
In that case, why have they been imprisoned?
That's a very good question. That's what I want to get to the heart of. Now, the point is, of course...
Andrew, all I'm saying is that you might disagree with this. I trust our courts more than you and I to make that call. Now, other people might disagree with that.
It's not that I disagree. It's just that there's been over 6 decades of research into media effects theories, and we know that there is no direct causal effect between what people post online or indeed what people consume in popular culture and real-world harm. That's been long discredited, which is why it wasn't introduced in any of the court cases. Let's take, for example, Lucy Connolly. She posted a very horrible tweet that I agree with you, was appalling, 31 months in prison. There is no evidence whatsoever that her tweet led to any violence, and that has been conceded by the prosecution. We are basing all of this on speculation. What I'm asking you is, can theoretical speculation be sufficient to empower the state to impose draconian jail terms on individuals for the speech they choose to utter?
Well, I think it's tricky. I think it's a complicated area. And of course, I think 31 months is a very long time for someone to go to jail for something they posted, however despicable it might have been. I reiterate, I don't remotely feel sorry for this individual. I think you have to be careful about what you say and how you say it. I genuinely do not feel, I don't care. She's gone to prison and it's, if it maybe is not quite proportionate, I do think, you reap what you say. So I don't feel sorry for her whatsoever.
So if the criteria is simply that you and others like you find what they said rebarbative, if that is the criteria, might it not set a precedent whereby a future government might say, well, criticism of the government's policies is hateful. And look, we've got some legislation here that means you're going to prison. Does that not concern you?
I understand that, and that does concern me, but I don't think that's likely to happen. I think all of this nonsense about Keir Starmer being some authoritarian person who's going to sort of take us down the road of not being able to say anything in the thought police, I think is just a load of overblown.
Okay, you might trust Keir Starmer, but there might be a future government or a future leader you don't anticipate who maybe you wouldn't trust.
I understand that. I've studied history, I've studied political theory. I totally understand all of the parallels and all of the challenges. I really do. What I'm saying is, and you might know the Lucy Connolly case. You probably do know that case much better than I do. Why is it that she has gone to jail? There must have been a reason.
Andy, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate that.